Chapter 1. 2 years later, and our government continues to search for ETs. Considering what came to light during the salvage of the Modronovich, I say we just sit quietly in our corner of the galaxy and hope they forget about us. The Harvard Editorial, February 1st, 11/4/53 CTD. Have you ever been in a relationship that you knew was doomed from the start? Mum says I need to keep my diary up to date. And I know that's not a promising opening line, but here we are. So, I'll just plough in. I guess it was late February in 11/4/53, by the common Terran calendar, that I was lying on my bed in the apartment reflecting on the last 2 years. And that opening question. The initial media fervour surrounding our finding the Modronovich, and consequently discovering that we were not alone in the universe, had died down to the point that all the attention was now on the money and politics that surrounded finding them. I still received the occasional request for interviews, and the governor made me appear at the launching of the Seeker last year. It was the first in a line of ships built here on Chalkis, commissioned solely for deep space exploration. It had taken less time to build the ship than to decide on the crew. But that's the political side of things. Personally, I hope we never find them. Anyway, that's how I met William Pencrest. William's a pilot, like me. He flies for a construction company that contracts with Colonial Survey Authority to drop men and equipment off on planets or moons to build domes or whatever needs building. He was brought on stage as an expert to give commentary on stuff about piloting. He basically confirmed everything I said, on camera, to the viewers of the 3 talk shows I agreed to appear on because my mother and Tom ganged up on me. Mum just likes to see me in the limelight. On camera, there's no mistaking whose daughter I am, and Tom likes the company name circulating on the news feeds. It started out backstage. Hi, how are you? Would you like a cup of coffee? Then I agreed to lunch, then a late dinner, a date to the aquarium. Well, you know how it goes. Mum knew William from the talk shows because she watched and rewatched them each a dozen times to give me pointers on my facial expression and body language. Because that's what a half-century of acting makes you think about. But I kept our relationship a secret for as long as I could. We made it almost 6 months before a net journalist snapped a picture of us together at a resort on the other side of the continent, and the gig was up. She saw the picture, and I was ordered to bring him to the villa so she could meet him. Read, evaluate him. In all that time, we've been back to the Pearls exactly once. Not because of Mum. She's a great host, and she likes William, but it's our line of work that gets in the way. He has to go where and when his company tells him, for however long it takes. 5 weeks or 5 months, to jump out to wherever they send him, then the jump back. And it's the same for me. Tom says, go there and search for a ship that's been drifting for 10 years, and drop a nav beacon for the insurance agency. Or, go here and pull a tourist yacht out of an asteroid field because the captain was showing off his manual piloting skills. So you see, our schedules are a mess. I'm here on the planet working as Tom's glorified assistant, and he's flying to some colony world that needs parts for a water reclamation system. Or it's the reverse. He's off for 2 or 3 months, and I'm out there in the big black. The apartment SC made a soft chime, and I knew it was about to remind me that tonight was one of those rare planetary alignments. B, it started in its calm voice. You have your date with Mr. Pencrest. Are you getting ready? Rare planetary alignments. The last time I saw William was 2 months ago. Yes, I said. Then, no. Maybe. The SC paused before replying. It gave it an air of consideration. My response would have confused a human being, so it was mimicking that. Then it settled on, but B. Childer's house serves the best after-dinner mille-feuille on the planet. The Republic's February is October on Chalkis. A sunny month in the capital city. At night the temperature drops 20 degrees. So even though my skirt was knee-length, it was fleece, and I took a burgundy scarf that Mum gave me for my birthday last year to keep the chill off my shoulders and neck, because Childer's house was on the wharf and there wasn't any point in going unless you were going to eat outside. William was from Abseton, an old frontier town in the settlement days that was now considered a historic site with museums and zoos. It was over 1,000 kilometres to the west. He would have picked me up in his air car if I had asked, but I thought it would be easier for him to take a shuttle and meet at the parkway entrance that led into Chalkis City's own touristy district on the coast. There were a lot of shops and street performers along the way to the wharf. I took the Skyline Bridge from the apartment building to Landing Park Square Hotel, and then down the lift to the street level. The apartment SC called a taxi before I left, and it was waiting on the curb across from the park. The sky was fading, but the city never slept, and there were people still in the park, walking on the sidewalks, feeding the already fat duckettes in the pond, and sitting on benches with the glow of link games or news feeds floating in front of them. By comparison, life in Chalkis City wasn't as slow or relaxed as in the Pearls, but it had its moments. Traffic was heavy going out of the city, turning the 30-minute ride into an hour-long trip. I could have requested a car from an air service and been at the parkway in 10 minutes, but this was what I wanted. Scenery outside a window that was going by while I thought about the future, about William, my job, Mum, all of it together. It was nothing I hadn't thought about before. The last jump I made on the Bryn was 3 weeks out to an old warehouse orbital that was being decommissioned, and the company that owned it wanted some crates hauled to a station another 2 weeks away. Then it was almost a 4-week jump back. There was a lot of time to think during a jump. But with William here, less than 100 kilometres away, I was beginning to feel like I needed to make some decisions. I watched the buildings and people pass by, reminding myself that I really didn't have to work. If Mum had her way, I would be living with her at the villa, doing nothing more strenuous than working on my tan lines and always to hand. She would drag me to art shows and fan reunions. But I would be here any time William came back from a jump. All on their own, my eyes wandered up to the edge of the window. The sky wasn't dark enough to see the stars, but in my head I could make pinpoints of light where all the brightest ones would be when night came. As predictable as the world turns. When I was in the rescue patrol, I dated a sergeant in another unit. We both spent a lot of time flying around the system or sitting in a flight cabin somewhere out in the dark watching ships jump in and make their way to the traffic lanes. But when our schedules jigsawed in place and we were on Sky Harbour for administrative duty, we would eat lunch together, go see a movie. I can't remember a time when we ever had actual leave at the same time. We dated in hours, and I don't think we ever made it down to Chalkis to a resort or a walk in Landing Park Square. It lasted about a year, or 72 hours if you lumped all of the time we actually spent together into one. The buildings began to get smaller, and the street turned into a ceramicrete highway. I was still looking up at the sky when my link buzzed. It was William. I smiled when his face projected over my wrist. "Hello, beautiful," he said, and that meant something coming from a man that underwent gene therapy when he was a fetus. I smiled back at him. "Hello, beautiful yourself. Am I late?" He glanced at something and shook his head. No, I'm about 10 minutes away. Me too, I said. The SC just confirmed our reservations, he told me. We have plenty of time. I'll see you in a few. I smiled again and told him okay, then closed the connection. The city almost disappeared, the landscape changing to irrigated fields, but only for a few kilometres. The Heights, a beachfront resort, appeared through the taxi's window, its surface gleaming with the last of the sun's light. And the first traces of the parkway's seaside atmosphere could be seen in small shops where you could rent bikes, book yacht trips, and learn how to scuba dive. I was probably qualified to teach the last. I was a born water girl. Half of my life was spent in the waves and bobbing the Pole's coral reefs. Half of my life. That was right. The big 4-0 was right around the corner. As the taxi slowed to drop me off, I saw William standing at the parkway's beach entrance. He stood out. Not just because of his genetic engineering, but because of his shirt. I laughed as I opened the door and stepped out onto the sidewalk. He smiled when he saw me and straightened the front of the red, green and yellow floral shirt. You know only tourists wear those, I said as I kissed him and took his hand.